Intense airstrikes batter the city of Raqqa, under the control of Islamic State militants. Activists say Syrian government forces launched a series of strikes on the city, killing at least 7 civilians, 5 of which are said to be from the same family.
It is no shock that the terrorist group calling themselves ISIS is more than prepared to take their version of war against the West away from strict military and exact punishment on civilians. The beheadings speak to that side of their terrorism. But now the game is taken to another level, that of killing American oil workers by a group merely taking their cue from the big team. It's a pleasure to welcome back to MidPoint former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth with the weekly intelligence briefing. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks for having me.
Have a nice Thanksgiving.
I did, and
Excellent.
you?
There you go. Very nice, very filling. Had to make sure now that the week has all begun, we put the holidays behind us and look ahead to the new one. Let's look ahead to what ISIS is doing, but not even ISIS this time. The killing of an American oil worker by a group that is not affiliated with, but is taking their cue from ISIS. Is this what we've been fearing for a while? And that's going to be that here come the next groups and the next groups and the copycats, and it is going to spread like a cancer very quickly.
Absolutely. ISIS really has changed the game. If you look at what they've done, the beheadings, crucifixions, which we're going to talk about, we talk about the airstrikes, there's a lot of groups out there now mimicking it. And if you look at Boko Haram in Nigeria, they're now taking territory, much like we had ISIS doing. They really have changed the game, and I fear that we're going to see more of the same, more groups trying to kidnap Americans. We're also expanding it now. We had aid workers, which was bad enough, journalists, and now these are oil workers. These are people at facilities in the Middle East working, nothing to do with military or combat or anything else, except they're Americans, and they are now real targets.
And there's really not anything we can do. I mean, the government can forbid someone from going to a country, but let's be very honest. That didn't work in Cuba for a lot of years. It hasn't worked in a lot of other areas around the world. So isn't the American government pretty much helpless when it comes to protecting their own in many cases?
Oh, absolutely. And as you say, we issue travel advisories. We issue travel warnings. But oil is in the Middle East, and there are big companies that really want to have a presence there. It's highly unlikely people are going to give up. We're just going to abandon the Middle East. We're going to say no more activity in the Middle East. And you have to remember, this was in Egypt, is the case that you're talking about here. You know, Egypt is a country we think of as not all that dangerous. What about Libya? You know, take that. What about Iraq? What about places that there's even less control? Those places are very volatile, and as you say, there's not a lot we can do about it.
What does this tell us then, because this happened in Egypt by an offshoot group of ISIS, about that cockroach-like growth, if you will, of these others, and the fact that the local governments there in these different Middle Eastern cities and states and countries, they can't control it either, and they're not aware of what's going on under their nose.
Right, absolutely. And this group was in the Sinai, which is kind of a no man's land too.
Right.
There's very little control there. And we are going to see more of this. I think you're exactly right. I think we're going to see groups who are suddenly aligned with ISIS, who are offshoots, and they see an opportunity to make a big splash on the international stage. This makes a big splash.
Are we making a big enough splash right now with some of the attacks, because they've now shifted, the coalition is going to what is called the ISIS capital, if you will, that we're going after? Is that, there's a part of me that wants to say that's the right thing to do. There's a part of me that wants to say we're still just fooling ourselves if we think we're going to drive them out with these air attacks.
The first thing is, Raqqa is, of course, their headquarters right now, today. But what we've seen is, if we bomb Raqqa, I think we're, as you said, fooling ourselves if we believe they're going to go, oh well, you bombed us, our headquarters, we quit. No, they'll have another headquarters somewhere else. The other real irony with this is, in the morning, Assad's forces are doing airstrikes in Raqqa. In the evening, the United States is doing airstrikes. In between, what you're seeing is what we were just talking about. They had 5 crucifixions yesterday by ISIS in Raqqa, 3 beheadings yesterday. I spoke with a friend of mine who's with a refugee group in Syria. They're begging the international community for a no-fly zone over Raqqa because civilians, life there is awful. They're starving to death. There's constant airstrikes. They're begging for some relief here. So, you know, are we doing the right thing? I don't know.
Is there anything we can do then? I mean, you're talking about a no-fly zone. That would seem to just fly in the face of what the strategy is in the first place.
Absolutely. We're creating a humanitarian crisis. On the other hand, what cost war kind of thing. You know, this is, if we're going to go after them, there are going to be these kind of things. But it does raise an interesting point about whether we're working with Assad. And there's a lot of allegations that people in Syria believe we are. I'll tell you that.
You think we are?
I think we probably are.
I think we probably are, one way or the other, no matter
Yeah.
how much we try to say that we're not. We have to. Okay,
Yep.
Stick around. Lisa Ruth returns after the break. We turn toward the homeland. Another chance to address whether there is a real security threat from terrorists crossing the border. We are hearing it again. The politicians will talk about it. We will as well. Stay with us. That happens right here on MidPoint, where we question everything.